Thank you all for joining today's call to hear the views from around the Valley. I wanted to mention that we will be muting all microphones except for the speakers during the call while the panelists are talking. After we go through the panelist section, there will be a session for Q&A. During that time, we will allow you to unmute your mics. You can raise your hand or type a question and comment in the chat. And now I'm going to turn it over to our president, Ken Evans. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Ken Evans here, president for the Urban Chamber of Commerce. Pleased to have you be part of our Views from the Valley event. We make an effort to do this every year because we want to make sure that you get access to the latest and greatest information from a strategic standpoint for all our jurisdictions. And beyond that, we recognize that a lot of our audience are small business owners, small diverse business owners that are trying to figure out how they can do some business development planning for the future. So we also try to make sure that we bring on panelists that can address not only conceptually and strategically, but from an economic development standpoint, what's going on within the various jurisdictions. It's no secret that we've had some challenges with COVID-19. The coronavirus is definitely having an impact on what we're able to do regionally from an economic standpoint. So all the more reason why we want these individuals on the panel today to give you some insight about the pathway forward for their various jurisdictions and how we hope to, as we like to say here at the Chamber, survive to thrive. What I'd like to do now is, before we get into the questions, I want to work my way through the panelists and have each of them give you about a minute introduction of their background, personally and professionally, to their current position, just so you'll have an idea of the panelists, how long they've been in Vegas, maybe a few key positions, and then the current position that they're in right now. And what we'll do is we'll start with our city manager from North Las Vegas, and we'll ask Ryann Juden, if you would please introduce yourself and just share a little bit for about a minute about your background, please.
You bet. Thanks, Ken. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. As Ken said, my name is Ryann Juden. I'm the city manager for the city of North Las Vegas. I've been in the Valley for about 15 years, did undergrad at Brigham Young University, then law school at the University of Iowa, spent some time in DC, worked on the Hill, worked in the White House Office of Faith-Based Community Initiative. Then I came out to the Valley, was at a corporate law firm and started doing some development and kind of started moving that way as a career path. Also have taught at UNLV and CSN quite regularly. As far as economic development goes, my doctorate work is in economic development. It's something that we're very passionate about in North Las Vegas. I received a call. I was doing work at the Brookings Institute and received a call from Mayor Lee back in 2012 and asked me to put together, a colleague of mine and myself to put together a plan on how North Las Vegas can be saved. So that was kind of what I expected the extent of my involvement with North Las Vegas to be, was putting together a plan. But then I had a unique opportunity, which, having done several of these in the past, having myself been involved in purchasing and acquisitions of different businesses and selling off assets, keeping assets, doing different things like that, it was a really unique opportunity to come in and into a government like North Las Vegas that was on the brink of insolvency and see if a plan worked. We all do that in business. We have the opportunity we have a dream or a vision. Many times you think of something first in your mind, then you write it down on paper, and then you go out and do it. And so sometimes in the academy, we don't get a lot of opportunities to go and implement a plan. So it's been very interesting in North Las Vegas. The mayor made me two promises when I agreed to come into the city. One was I would have every tool that I needed. And the second was, no one will like you. I think we've kind of gotten over that. We did have to make a lot of changes in the city in order to make it work and function like a business. But that's my background. And now we're moving North Las Vegas. We're continuing to move it forward.
Thank you, Ryan. And I definitely look forward to coming back to some of the things that you mentioned, because part of the reason why we definitely want you on the panel is we foresee a lot of opportunities in North Las Vegas despite some of the recent challenges, and we'll talk about those again later. Next up, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. I'd like to have the next individual introduce himself. Definitely has been a friend and supporter of the Chamber, both in some of his previous positions as well as in his current position. And if you would, Derek Armstrong, would you please give us a little bit about your background as well?
Hey, thanks, Ken. I appreciate the invite to be part of this, and really appreciate interacting with the Urban Chamber and your guys' members. So background about myself. So I was born in Vegas. I turned 40 in August, so I've been here almost 40 years, even though I have a little bit of a baby face. After high school, I joined the Marine Corps, spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, got out as a staff sergeant, came back, went to school at UNLV, got my undergrad in economics. Then I went to law school, also at the Boyd School of Law at UNLV, graduated in 2010. Started a law firm with one of my best friends in law school, who was also a CPA, so we also started an accounting firm. Actually went back to school to do accounting as well after that. So accountant and attorney, did that for about 5 years before running for office back in 2014. Was elected to the State Assembly and chaired the Taxation Committee. Through that committee, we were able to really pass a few of the incentive programs for businesses. And then additionally, chaired the Committee of the Whole for 2 special sessions. One worked with Ryan on the Faraday project, and then the second special session for the Convention Center and the stadium. Lost in 2016, but the governor asked me to go to the governor's office of economic development. So as the deputy director for the state for several years, had the pleasure of going out with some of your members. I see Melvin on out to Africa on that trip. Haven't seen him since we were, I think, in South Africa. So good to see you as well. And then about a year ago, went over to the city of Henderson. It's been a great transition for me. I was able to work on several of the projects at the state level and now implementing at the local level, including Haas, which I'm sure we'll be speaking about, and some of the other projects. That's a quick introduction for myself.
All right. Thank you very much, Derek. And yes, definitely we'll want to touch on Haas a little bit, because that's an example of some of the opportunities that are coming to the city of Henderson that our members need to be aware of. And yes, the points you made about making the trip to Africa, we also hope that at some point we'll be able to continue those efforts too. The next individual, he and I go all the way back to grad school when I got about halfway through a master's in public administration before getting an MBA, but we've known each other off and on throughout the years. He's been instrumental to the economic development effort at the city of Las Vegas. And if you would, Bill Arndt, would you please take some time and introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Ken, and thanks to the Urban Chamber for being on the panel. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm not a native Las Vegas, but I feel like it at times. I've been here since the mid-'80s, since 1984. Went to 2 years of middle school. They called it junior high back then at Kenny Gwynn, and 3 years at Clark High School. I left Vegas for undergrad, went to University of Pennsylvania in Philly, my original hometown. Missed the West, came back out. Was a ski bum for a year and then fell into the corporate world doing some corporate jobs. I worked for a nonprofit Title VIII Civil Rights Act Fair Housing Discrimination Group, developed a fair housing center for about 2 years, and then joined the city of Las Vegas, initially doing community development and affordable housing work. And my background in undergrad was in economics, like Derek. And so like many in our field, we kind of fall into it. You don't kind of design to go into it by choice normally, but really fell love with the field and really love Las Vegas and our community. And so I've been doing economic development for the city of Las Vegas since 2002. And what that means for the city is we're focused on supporting existing businesses, trying to recruit new ones, focused on entrepreneurship. But then maybe a little bit differently than some of my neighbors, we're very heavily focused on redevelopment. I know North Las Vegas and Henderson both do that. But for Las Vegas, it's really been what we've been known for, because we had an urban core in our downtown area that was really in disarray in the 80s into the 90s. And so we focused real heavily on investing in new projects, new developments. And so my background is pretty varied, but really the core expertise, I think, is working in real estate projects, urban real estate projects, and then public-private projects, public-private partnerships. Certainly we value our partnership with the Chamber, and I think we're now kind of turning the corner and getting more back into traditional economic development with working with businesses, working on how we can support entrepreneurs and maybe our younger businesses in our valley. I think that's probably one of the things you'll hear on this call today, that large businesses can weather the storm, but those smaller businesses, those more recently formed businesses, are really going to struggle and be challenged to even staying as a going concern in the climate that we're in. And how do we as a community support those smaller businesses and those younger businesses? And I think groups like the Chamber can play a really vital role in that.
Absolutely. And that's the thing I appreciate, is the fact that your jurisdiction and the other jurisdictions haven't lost sight of the fact that we need to do what we can for small, diverse businesses, especially in these challenging times. And we'll come back to some of those things. Last but not least, the following individual is very accomplished as well. I'll give her a chance to introduce herself, but one thing I want to throw out there from the start is what I've really appreciated and watched from a distance is how she helped to bring the medical district together before going into her current position. And along the same lines, she's proven to be a great supporter and friend of the Urban Chamber as well. And I know there's some things she wants to continue to do that our members will be interested in. So without further ado, Shani Coleman, would you please take a couple of minutes and introduce your background as well? Thank you.
Absolutely, Ken. First, just thank you for putting all of this together, and thank everybody for joining us today. Ken mentioned, I've been in Las Vegas for a long time. I was actually born and raised here, and I think Bill mentioned it. Sometimes you just kind of fall into economic development. My background before economic development was commercial real estate and development. I worked with a number of brokerage houses and commercial real estate firms here in Las Vegas. And then when the recession hit, was able to pivot and take that experience and that knowledge and use it towards helping to grow the economy. I started my career in economic development actually with the city of Las Vegas. And so I've had the opportunity to work with Bill Arndt for a number of years in this space. And so some of the things that I was able to do, Ken mentioned Las Vegas Medical District. For 6 or 7 years, I spearheaded that project, helping bring the School of Medicine and looking at different ways. We developed a master plan for the medical district. So really making that a source of pride for the city of Las Vegas. Also in my tenure, Symphony Park was something, Bill mentioned redevelopment. Just about anything downtown was always a focus for us. And so projects that I've worked on are the Supreme Court building downtown, Fremont East that you see downtown, Symphony Park. And so I didn't spend my whole entire career at the city in economic development. Like Derek and Ryan, I also have a law degree. And so I think there was an opportunity to utilize that law degree. And so the last part of my career at the city, I actually spent doing government affairs. Went up to the legislative session last session in 2019, and was the city's lead lobbyist, helping to address, all the things that were important to the city of Las Vegas. and also governments in general. So I was recruited out of the city by Clark County. Clark County has an interest, or had an interest, or still does have an interest in actually developing a strategic economic development department. As most of you know, county offers regional services, but they also offer municipal services. So there are about 1 million or so residents who live in what we consider unincorporated Clark County, for which Clark County offers municipal services. So similar to Henderson, North Las Vegas, and City of Las Vegas, where they have strategic economic development departments and redevelopment departments, county felt it was time for them to move in that direction. And so they recruited me out of the City of Las Vegas to help develop that department and move them in that direction. So that's where I'm at now. I've been at the county for about 6-7 months. I started in November. So we're still looking at different things and moving through, and hope to be able to provide a little bit of insight about some of the things that are important to our county commissioners related to economic development and growth. So.
And I'm sure you will. And what I like is the fact that you have hit the ground running, not only in terms of your primary economic development responsibilities, but in addition to that, with some of the small business assistance that will be necessary to keep our businesses growing. You've also hit the ground running with that. And in fact, you're working with the Urban Chamber, Latin Chamber, Asian Chamber, and other chambers to do some of those things as well. So thank you for that. Here's what I'm sure is top of mind to everyone. With COVID-19, with the relaunch that's going on, I'm sure everybody's wondering, where are we headed as a region? What are the strategic plans, or what is the strategic direction that the various jurisdictions plan to go in? So the first thing I want to do is just, and we'll start with Ryann, and then I'll kind of bring actually we'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with Ryann, then we'll go with Derek, Bill, and Shani again, and I'll reverse the order from time to time. But what I'd like you to do is just touch on, with the relaunch that's going on, what is the economic development agenda you think your jurisdiction will be going in terms of the Nevada recovery plan? And again, we'll start with Ryann.
So I think just a couple key points. I think one thing that we'll be focusing a lot when it comes to economic development is helping our small businesses, helping to fortify the base that we have. We very much take an approach like that at North Las Vegas. Whenever we inherited the challenges that we inherited, we took the approach that instead of going back to existing businesses and taxing them to bring more revenues in, we were going to expand the tax base by attracting new businesses in. Now we kind of find ourselves in a position where we need to shore up hospitality and tourism. Definitely. We need to shore up all the businesses that support and supply them. And as far as outside economic development efforts, we need to make sure we're attracting businesses to come in that already have a connection. So for example, we've been talking with supply chain businesses that supply directly to the Strip, to attract them here so they can supply their goods to tourism entities within that sector, as well as have an export base. I think the second point that's very critical, and it's something that we're in the middle of a fight on, quite frankly, with the state, is you talk about the relief dollars. And the county has done a great job. Shani's done a great job in putting together, I think they put $20 million or something into several different pots, but one of them was a pot for small businesses, those that didn't receive federal dollars, to help stabilize them with stabilization grants. Unfortunately, in Southern Nevada, for unknown reason, the governor has decided to use a different kind of math in allocating resources that came from the federal government. So you had a $2 trillion package, the CARES Act, that passed through Congress, and every state was guaranteed $1.25 billion. From that, the way the Treasury says the math should be done is that when the state receives their allocation, they take 45% of that and distribute it to all local governments under 500,000. That was not done. So really what it's resulted in is a decrease in over $100 million that should have gone to North Las Vegas, should have gone to Henderson. And with that, we could use that money right now for business stabilization grants, some of the programs, for example, that North Las Vegas Council would like to do, or programs for minority and women-owned business for stabilization grants, small business protective retrofit grants, all kinds of different things that we would like to use that money for, what the government calls second effect. You know, Las Vegas took, I think, about $4 million of the direct allocations they received from the federal government, and they gave that to their businesses. We're looking at, we have a bit of a different approach in North Las Vegas. We believe that it's most important that you shore up your tax base, you shore up your businesses that are out there that are creating jobs, that are generating revenues and generating opportunities. And we would take the lion's share of resources that we receive from the federal government, and we would use them to make sure that it's a long-term play. If you don't make sure that those businesses are there for the long term, you've shot yourself in the foot. And so it's critical. And I think if there's one thing that I think the membership of the Urban Chamber should be doing, it's contacting the governor's office, contacting the federal delegation, and letting them know, hey, there is the state is holding on to $228 million that was designed to be deployed into local governments, so the local governments could push it down to the businesses that need it, to the people that need it through rent assistance and utility assistance and different things like that. So I think that's a very important thing that we do in Southern Nevada, because as you know, lots of times in Southern Nevada, we're competing against Northern Nevada for opportunities that come into the state. And Northern Nevada has received all these direct allocations. For the city of Reno, which is the 4th largest city in the state, to receive $47 million directly from the governor's office, but Henderson, the 2nd largest city in the state, and North Las Vegas, the 3rd largest city in the state, to not receive any, it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful for our minority owned businesses. It's disgraceful for our communities of color that need these kinds of opportunities. And that's something that for us, for economic development, to make sure that we don't get further behind is critical.
Thank you very much. That's definitely good information for us to know, because we make it a point to stay engaged in the advocacy role. Derek, if you would, from your perspective, a couple of key concepts or directions forward as we make our way through the recovery. And please unmute yourself. There you go. Please unmute yourself again.
Okay. All right. No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate Ryan's comments, and I know that there's a number of discussions that are ongoing, and I think we're hopeful that we'll eventually receive some additional funding or funding from the CARES Act, so we can increase the scope of what we're working on. So I think from the city's perspective is that we were going through something, and we needed to stop, pause, and really take some inventory on how we can help businesses be successful. One, I think everybody experienced this really need to figure out what essential versus non-essential meant in the very beginning, and who could be open and how you could be open. And we've moved to the point from that to now it's really how do we set the stage throughout reopening as a city to allow businesses to be successful. And I think working with the small business community, we found a number of different things through either our code enforcement being able to provide signage and stickers, floors, and others for social distancing, working through some of our redevelopment areas to figure out how we can, similar to Las Vegas, where they allowed some outdoor dining and other creative ways to increase space, so more people could go to those businesses. Working with Shani and the county on doing a business impact survey just to see how successful businesses were in applying for federal resources and where those gaps still are that we can identify, and then as a city or a county or a state, be effective in helping those small businesses reopen and be successful. So we have taken the approach to where we needed to reevaluate the city's whole strategic plan, and our amendments to that will be presented to our city council in the next few weeks and adopted. So for economic recovery, I lead that effort for the city. And what we did is we took a look at our economic vitality portion of the strategic plan. And then we added the setting the stage portion to that. So through setting the stage, we were able to accomplish a few things. Right now, we're doing the business impact survey, which includes mostly small businesses. The second portion of that is we work through code enforcement and through business licensing. So all the businesses in Henderson that were closed, their business license were extended 2 months. So they weren't paying for a business license while their business was closed, which was a small thing to provide some business relief, but hopefully something. Then additionally, we are working on a new marketing campaign when it comes to business attraction as well. We're in the final stages of selecting a new marketing firm to really be strategic. I think that we saw throughout the pandemic that a number of businesses are a little bit more resilient than others. Like manufacturing it's a growing component in Henderson. Healthcare is a huge need. And so we'll continue working on those sectors that make a lot of sense for us as well. And then for financial resiliency, and this is where we've really tried to work with business associations, small business and large businesses. So I host a recovery group that consists of the Henderson Chamber, LVGEA, the Water Street District Business Association, small businesses like Juan's Flaming Fajitas, and a few small architecture firms, just to figure out what types of things that we need to be considering as things like federal legislation comes out, and we can lobby our federal delegation. The upcoming special session that we know is coming in the beginning of July in Carson, and really trying to keep in mind as to how do we create a pro-business environment in which businesses can be successful, because we know that there will be some businesses that aren't able to open their doors, but how can we be most effective in helping as many as we possibly can reopen and be successful? So I think that's the approach that Henderson is really taking. In addition of working with Bill, Shani, and Ryan, and I are all on the regional effort that Shani leads too.
Okay, excellent. And one thing I want to point out is I hope our business owners, and I see several dozen of you out there, I hope you're taking notes. And I would assume that when these items come before, for example, the Henderson City Council, or even some of the small business groups that you're referring to, I'd assume that those are open to public participation or engagement at some point. Is that correct, Derek?
I'm always more the merrier in everything I do.
Okay, excellent. So please, again, to my members out there, and even if they're non-members on board, by all means, please get engaged on the front end. Next up, Bill Arndt, if you would, please share with us a few things about the direction the city's going in terms of the relaunch and being part of your recovery plan.
Sure, thanks, Ken. And I want to pick up something Ryan mentioned a few minutes ago is, I think he's right. I think we do have to focus not only on the short run, but also the long run and the long term. Some of the things, admittedly, that we're doing initially are kind of a Band-Aid approach. We have businesses that are at risk of failure. And so the city came up with some guiding principles on how we're thinking through the recovery, and it's shaping our recovery plan. And I'm just going to mention a few of these. Most of them are long-term, though. We've done some initial things like Derek and Henderson with giving help on business license fees. Things like that. We did do the business preparedness grant of $4 million. And we are, just to let the members know, we're looking at launching an additional round, a smaller round 2 of $2 million. And one of the things we heard is some smaller businesses, micro enterprises that may be home-based or mom and pop type businesses, 1 or 2 employees, they were hit hard or even harder, and maybe not have as many financial resources as larger businesses. So we're looking at maybe ways to try to help some of those businesses. I think Ryan is right. The way the money was rolled out federally, top down to the states, created a winner and loser situation with some cities like Las Vegas being eligible to get relief directly. And so we were fortunate to get a large relief from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and other cities were not. And so I think it's putting local government and states in a position of react and fix. So we're kind of having to fix maybe some inequities that were set by the way the federal government rolled that out. And I know those are going to be ongoing conversations with the county and the state on that. But real quickly, some of the guiding principles, we're trying to finish projects already in progress. So all the construction and momentum we have downtown, we want to make sure those projects finish. we're trying to minimize small business failures. And I realized that we're not going to eliminate small business failures. So one of the things we did with our business preparedness grant program is we did set a threshold that you had to have a business through a business license as of last December of 2019. If you opened into this crisis, the reality is you may not make it if you're a brand new business, or you may have to pivot how you run your business. But those businesses that were already up and running, that had an operating history, that had a business history with Las Vegas, we're trying to do what we can to support those businesses. But then some of the long-term goals, we're focusing on maximizing local employment. So that means helping our existing businesses sustain through the recovery and expand. Addressing the fiscal impact to the city, we're going to take a hit as all local government on this call. We're going to take a hit, and how do we continue to deliver services? So trying to focus on measures that will lead to a long-term return on investment for the city. We're focused on retraining and remote learning opportunities. I think that whatever the new normal is going to be, we're not sure yet, but I think the place of work and businesses and companies relying more on telecommuting and remote working is a challenge, but I think it's a big opportunity for Las Vegas. You see other communities around the country, like Tulsa, like the entire state of Vermont, that are trying to aggressively recruit tech workers and take advantage of remote workers, particularly in the IT sector, that maybe can work in a community that has a lower cost of doing business or lower cost of living, yet has great amenities. I think Las Vegas, not just city Las Vegas, but our region, really checks all those boxes. And I think that's something we should think about strategically, because if we grow the talent pool here, even if some of them are coming in from outside the valley, that'll lift up the entire talent pool here. And that'll help bring more employment opportunities, not only for those new folks coming in, but the existing workers that are here. We're very focused on growing not only our medical district, but our innovation district downtown. We're focused on new opportunities with some small business lending. We're having conversations with everyone on the call today about a revolving loan fund or a micro lending program. And we want to figure out the right partners for that. There's money out on the street through CARES Act, specifically through the EDA, Economic Development Administration, and a city or a nonprofit's eligible for that. So we're trying to think through what should that look like. We don't want it to supplant other monies that are already there, or duplicate what the federal government did with the Paycheck Protection Program or other programs, but what's needed most right now. And what we're hearing from the business community is micro lending, that a lot of businesses really did get help. Certainly not every business in the Valley through the PPP, but a lot of businesses did. So what businesses were left out and what businesses are most at risk of failure? And so I think that's something that's important and probably would be of interest to your members. And then finally, new business models and adopt innovative codes. How do we make it easier for businesses from a regulatory standpoint moving forward? I think that's something that we can and should be doing. And as businesses reopen, just complying with the health district is a challenge. So how do we as local government make it easier, not more difficult, for those businesses to relaunch and reopen once things do get going more into the latter phases of the reopening for Las Vegas? So those are some of the things we're focused on right now.
Excellent, Bill. And similar to what I asked Derek about, you mentioned a couple of things where it'd be good for you to get input from our small business owners on what they need. You do welcome that feedback. And I'll ask this of all the panelists: if there's an email and/or phone number that people can follow up to give you input and feedback, if you could type that in the chat room, and then we'll make sure that we distribute that. But Bill, again, quick question: is there the possibility for our members to provide you with inputs on some of the things that you mentioned?
Absolutely. I think two things right now. We really need some immediate input. We have not set the final rules for that round 2 of the business preparedness grant. And so we'd like to hear from your members. We did focus on expenses tied to reopening, specifically PPE, health and safety equipment for the business, health and safety training for the workers. We thought we're trying to navigate within the framework of the CARES Act and what is specifically eligible. There are certain categories that are ineligible. For instance, I can't give a business money from the CARES Act and then have it turn around and pay a business license at the city. That's kind of supplanting local tax revenue, and it's not intended to do that. And there's certain things based on the guidance that we've heard that are specifically prohibited. That notwithstanding, it is pretty flexible and pretty open-ended. And I think that the good thing for the CARES Act is it is very flexible as far as how we roll it out. So we'd love to hear from your members on what's needed most right now. We know evictions, commercial evictions can start, I think, as early as July 1, or at least the process of landlords collecting for back rent and going through the formal process with delinquencies and evictions. I think smart landlords hopefully will work with their tenants that have been longstanding tenants and work out pay arrangements to keep them for the long haul. To me, that's good business, but we realize at the same time that landlords are hit hard too right now, and it's a trickle down from the equity owner or lender that essentially owns the asset to the landlord or the property manager, and then down to the tenant. So that's a tricky thing to work out. And again, we can't be the bank to everyone, but I think we can and should figure out a way to help businesses that have a means to see this through, but at the same time really need some help just to continue for continuity of operations to sustain the business, particularly over maybe the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, very good. So Bill, if you'll type in your email or contact for people to follow up and provide those inputs, I'm sure we will. Shani, definitely want to get the same perspective from you. Is if you'd share with us the direction that you foresee the county going in terms of the relaunch and as part of a greater recovery plan effort here in the region.
Of course. So I think, you know, I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse that the county didn't have an established program prior to COVID. You know, I started in November, and some of the things that we were focused on, which we're starting again, but we were focused on was the development of a strategic economic development plan specific for Clark County. And that was really to understand, okay, what's happening in our community, really drill down what's happening in our community, and identify the things that are important to our constituents as we move through that process. Understanding, okay, you know, what's North Las Vegas doing, what's City of Las Vegas doing, what's Henderson doing. And so when COVID happened, some of that preparation work, we just kind of said, okay, well, let's take a step back. And we really began to focus on recovery, right? One of the things that we understood as the most populous county in the state, and we have a number of businesses. We have jurisdiction over the Strip, which is the economic engine for a good portion of our state. But Clark County being as large as it is, we have over 44,000 businesses. And so what does that look like and what does that mean, especially for the small businesses? So we really started focused on recovery. And I think one of the first things that we did, there was a dialogue with the casinos, you know, the Strip, what's happening. And while they're not a small business, like I said, they are an economic engine for the entire state. You know, money that's generated on the Strip supports things that happen in our rural counties and up north. And so looking at recovery, we started, my department started working with our business licensing department, code enforcement, all of those things to try to understand, okay, what can we do to support? And so we developed what we call a regional reopening guide as the governor started coming out with with his different phases, we wanted businesses to feel comfortable on, okay, what does this all mean for me? And so we put that plan together in coordination with all of the municipalities in Southern Nevada. So it's a regional guide. You can download it from the county's website. Similarly, we put together free signage where businesses can go and download public safety and health signage, reminding constituents and employees to remain, to social distance and to wear a mask. And if they're not feeling well, don't come into the office or come into the location. But I think one of the biggest things that we realized is that we had a lot of small businesses out there that were financially hurting. And so as the most populous county in the state, we actually received direct CARES funding allocation, and we're able to look and see, okay, what are the opportunities to do something with those funds? And so our commission set aside about $21.5 million specifically to support small businesses. And there are 3 programs that were developed around that, but there were also other funds that were directed to help small business. So the first program was a stabilization grant. A business can get up to $10,000 for if they need help, as long as they've been in business for about 6 months. There's a rental assistance program, which we haven't launched yet, but with the governor's announcement regarding evictions and the moratorium ending, we know that that's going to be something important. And that grant offers up to $10,000 to help pay back rent. It's paid directly to the landlord. And then finally, there's the protective retrofit grant, which is really about public safety. And it offers up to $5,000 in reimbursement to a small business if they've had to do things like install plexiglass, or if they want to install no-touch doors, things of that nature, because we want our businesses to operate, but we also want them to be safe, do so in a safe and healthy way. But beyond those 3 programs that we set up, we set aside funds to help kind of what we call some of it auxiliary things that businesses may not know that they need. And so we put about $400,000 into Legal Aid of Southern Nevada. Traditionally, Legal Aid of Southern Nevada did not support small businesses. But through this program and recognizing that there are a lot of small businesses that may need consultation with an attorney, Legal Aid of Southern Nevada was able to establish a small business support program. And so Clark County was able to fund some of that. And so if it hasn't launched already, it will be launching in the next day or so. Basically, a small business, they can call up Legal Aid of Southern Nevada, and they can have an opportunity to talk through some of their questions and their concerns with a licensed attorney here in Nevada. The other thing that we're working on, I think Ken made reference to this, is that we are doing a partnership with the smaller chambers. So Urban Chamber, Latin Chamber, and Asian Chamber. We've set aside about $750,000 to support what we call disadvantaged businesses. So it's not necessarily a minority-owned business, but it could be minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, things of that nature. So we are working together to put a program specifically to address disadvantaged businesses. And then finally, we have what is our recognized regional economic development agency, which is Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, LVGEA. We have actually put some money towards that organization where they're going to be doing some intense outreach to businesses in Southern Nevada to make sure that businesses understand all of the resources that are available to them either through Southern Nevada or through the federal government. And so that's where we've gone with the 21 million that we set aside for businesses. I think there could be an opportunity to do more or do something different. We're looking at another program that we may launch regarding gift cards. Not sure when that will come to fruition, but we're looking at it because we think that's an interesting way to get constituents out to local businesses and also give local businesses an opportunity to get some revenue that they may need. I think through the recovery, as we start to build our strategic economic development plan, I think this pandemic gives us an opportunity to say, okay, from a long-term perspective, as a county, what do we really need to be doing? And some of the conversations that are being had, at Henderson, look in with North Las Vegas, looking long-term to say, okay, we all know we've been having this conversation for a very long time that we can't rely on hospitality and gaming and tourism. As everything fell apart, we ended up with the highest unemployment rate in the nation because of that. And so I think really digging down into what diversification of our economy looks like, reskilling. I think some businesses are going to realize maybe they don't need as many employees, or they have a number of employees that can work from home. And so where does that leave people? So reskilling and retooling employees, I think workforce development is going to be something that's vital and very important as we continue to move through this process. And then finally, I just want to talk about, the county, plays a number of roles. Like I said, we offer municipal service and regional services, but through this process, we've all worked together, Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Mesquite and Boulder City. We have what we call a regional recovery effort that we are all having the conversation about, okay, what do we need to do right now? But if something like this happens in the future, what are best practices that we can rely on so that way none of us are caught short-footed in the event of an unfortunate situation again. So that's kind of where the county's at right now, starting to look at, the future and what economic development looks like. But because we really didn't have a plan before this, really gives an opportunity to provide a blank slate. And I invite people, I've thrown my contact information in the chat. So please reach out to me and let me know your thoughts if you have any.
Thank you very much, Shani, and I'm glad you answered the question before I asked it of how do we provide input. And again, I want to encourage our Urban Chamber members, and then I also know we have some other guests on the call as well. If you have an interest in economic development and beyond that, how we want to expand and diversify our economy, please take the opportunity to provide your feedback to the individuals on our panel today. Jeff asked the question about being able to watch this later. Yes, it's being recorded, and we will plan to post it in our newsletter every week. If you haven't already, please sign up, info@urbanchamber.org, and I'll ask Delisa to type that in. But if you sign up at info@urbanchamber.org or on our website, urbanchamber.org, you can get our weekly In the News newsletter, and it's an e-newsletter. We'll make sure that we make this available. So thanks, Jeff, for that question. And we want everybody to participate. The other question that came in is, how can someone become a resource for the City of Las Vegas to offer information and assistance for these businesses as they are reopening? So Bill, if you would, could you respond to that?
Sure, and I'll invite my colleagues to jump in too. I'm going to answer that in two parts because I'm getting contacted directly by a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs that want to help businesses as they reopen. And one of the things I love about entrepreneurs is they're always looking for opportunities, and they're real needs that businesses have. So I'm going to answer it two ways with respect to COVID-19 type help as far as services, whether it be on a volunteer or on a business vendor relationship, specific for the city and then to businesses. With the city, we're doing all of our purchasing for PPE, anything related to the pandemic for our first responders, our employees. We're doing that in a coordinated effort all through our emergency management team. And that's as best we can trying to be done on a regional basis through a multi-agency coordination group led by Clark County, since Southern Nevada Health District is the lead agency for the response. So if the assistance is I have a service where I'm making facial coverings, or I have equipment for helping with health screenings or things like that, specific for government, we're doing all that through bulk purchasing in a coordinated way. So you can use me as a contact, and then I can put you in contact with our emergency management folks. Specific to businesses, one of the things that we did early on, and I don't know that government always does a great job of marketing and getting information out, but we've been coordinating as a region with the LVGEA and with GOED, Governor's Office of Economic Development, for having local suppliers that are providing not only for the public sector, but the private sector. There are a lot of companies that are making facial coverings, facial shields, health screening equipment. I was contacted by one entrepreneur that has advanced temperature screening in large crowds and using analytics. We have a great entrepreneurial spirit here in Las Vegas and Southern Nevada. For that, there's a page both on LVGA's website and GOED's website. I don't remember the exact web address for the state, but for LVGA, it's lvga.org/COVID-19. And there's a business survey that we ask suppliers to fill out. And I'll try to, during the call here, find the exact address. But if you go to that address, you can register as a supplier. And then we're distributing that supplier list to all the regional entities. So as we learn, manufacturers, local manufacturers may be repositioning some of their manufacturing plants to produce safety equipment in lieu of maybe their normal products that they do, just because of where we're at as an economy and as a region, and we need this equipment. I am talking to a local gentleman who has an interest in standing up a PPE manufacturing plant. Long-term, I think that's something as a region we probably can and should do. So a lot of different opportunities there, a lot of different needs. But those are some of the things that we're doing. I don't know if any of the other panelists have anything to add, but our needs are constantly changing too. So that's the other maybe takeaway, that our needs today may be different than our needs next week. So you really have to check back on at least a weekly basis to see what the needs are out there in our community.
Excellent. Do any of our other panelists have anything to interject? If not, because I know time is pressing, I want to get through a few other questions. Okay, the next, Derek, please unmute yourself, please.
Keep having to do that. No, I was just going to agree with Bill. Very early on, we wanted to make sure that there was a coordinated effort between all of the jurisdictions. And so we used LVGA as that kind of that host for a region to make sure that we weren't duplicating too much of an effort. So if you are interested, I would say go out to your local chambers, and then also that LVGA to sign up for their site.
Yep, and what I'll add is there's a business information network page. I'll ask Delisa to put that in the chat room as well, but there's a business information network link. And the idea behind it was to have a one-stop central place that the Governor's Office of Economic Development, the Governor's Office, LVGA, and everyone else could make sure that you could go to get current one-stop information versus sometimes conflicting information from different sources. So that, again, that's the Business Information Network website. The question that someone asked is, are there resources for nonprofits? For example, traditional 501c3s. Are there resources to help keep some of the nonprofits that are providing services at a time like this that are very critical to help people out? Any of our panelists want to handle that one?
I can speak to one of our grant programs is actually available to nonprofits, the Protective Retrofit. since that's about public health and we want people operating as safely and in a healthy way, that's the grant that allows up to $5,000 in reimbursements for purchase of PPE or installation or building modifications or any of those types of things. So nonprofits are eligible to participate in that particular grant at Clark County.
Okay, very good. The next question.
Pardon me,
Oh,
and just to echo Shani's comment, our business preparedness grant, we did open it up to nonprofits. And so the round 2, we do not have it released yet. It'll probably be about a week and a half to 2 weeks before we release it, but we are going to make nonprofits eligible since it's intended to help with reopening expenses. And the website will be lasvegasnevada.gov/reopening grant. So once it is live or about to go live, we'll certainly give you, Ken, a heads up so that you can distribute it to membership.
Excellent. One question 2 different people came up with that it's no secret that recently we've experienced some social and civil unrest in our region. And definitely if you study things like the Kerner Commission report, and I'm saying that in the recording so people will go back and read it. It's a report from 1967 that's still pertinent today. One of the things the Kerner Commission report talked about is the fact that if you address economic justice, it will help alleviate some of the social justice concerns you have. So very quickly, I'd like to go through with the panel. We'll start with Ryan again. Are there procurement things and employment things that can be done to make sure that African Americans participate in the recovery efforts, again, from both a procurement and an employment standpoint? And if you would each take about a minute to talk about that.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know we're short on time and you have a great panel with lots of great ideas. Just 2 points on that. As I'm looking through some of the questions, I would be remiss if I didn't once again say that as you've heard about different grants that are available for businesses and nonprofits and anyone else, the only people that can really talk about that are Bill and Shani because they received direct CARES dollars. And the governor's position is that we should go to them, to Las Vegas and Clark County, to get CARES dollars so we can distribute them to our businesses. That's not accurate. That's not the way it should be. And just an example of something that we intend to do in North Las Vegas and we had planned on doing before. Shani's shown great leadership, put some great programs together. We see no reason to replicate it. So when we get our CARES dollars, for example, we plan on taking $5 million and putting it into their business stabilization grant at the county that they can then administer to North Las Vegas businesses. So, and that's very critical to understand. If there's one reason why I was excited to get on this call is to make sure people recognize there's a call to action right now. There's $830 million that went to the state. Of that, there was $350 million that was supposed to be distributed to local governments. $228 million of that is still sitting in Carson City. That should have been in local governments and should have been going out in grants to businesses months ago. We're one of only 4 states in the entire country that's not doing that right now. So that's something that would help our minority businesses. Another thing that I think is really important in Nevada is we've done a very good job of place-based economic incentives, where you bring a business in and you make different investments in infrastructure and the building and in things like that. But really, economic development goes into 2 different areas. It goes into place-based and people-based investments. People-based investments, education, healthcare, workforce, quality of life, things like that. We haven't done a very good job of that in Nevada. And if you look at other states that we compete against, for example, Virginia, which is where the Amazon did their headquarters. Virginia does very well in both place-based and people-based economic incentives. The legislature's done a good job on the place-based, but we really need to focus on people-based because that'll get into our communities. That'll get into our communities of color, get into communities where they need that lift, and we'll invest in the people. And that's in the long term, that's a better strategy in many ways, because sometimes when a company gets done with their maybe 10 years of tax abatements, you don't have a lot that ties them into the state, and they leave sometimes. investing in our people, investing in our communities is always a great advantage. It's something that we stay. Yeah, some of them move away, get married and leave, but for the most part, that's an investment in our community that will stay. I think that's one of the things that we need to do that will be of most impact to our communities.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Derek, if you would, ideas to make sure that African Americans are part of both the employment and procurement.
No, I think Ryan's correct, and the city is working on deploying a small business relief program focused primarily on our redevelopment areas. And we know that there are some African American-owned businesses in that area, but the size and scope is going to be dependent on whether or not we receive CARES dollars or if we're just using some of our CDB allocation or otherwise. So it's an ongoing effort. So I agree with Ryan on those comments. Some of the other conversations we've had regionally are, one is access to capital and really the banking system. And we saw that Nevada's banking system does not work very well, and availability of applying for the PPP program and some of the other programs was really affected by the lack of banking or options for a lot of the businesses, including minority-owned businesses in Nevada. So as we move forward, it's really trying to figure out how we improve that access to capital, and whether that's through increased community banking or some of the other fintech options. I think we'll see some of that progress moving forward at the state, regional, and local levels, trying to do that. And then I think Ryan is also correct in that people-based or really helping on that employment. One of the things that had occurred in the CARES Act was the $1.5 billion in EDA funds, and Bill mentioned that as part of an RLF program that they're working on, which we're very hopeful that we could tag along on that effort. But what we're doing is we're really going after some grants for Henderson to set up a workforce training center to do training for advanced manufacturing, which will help the entire region grow manufacturing. And we know that we have a number of businesses coming in, folks like Haas, and we know that Tesla has been very involved in a lot of the education programs, even in Southern Nevada when they're recruiting. So we're very hopeful to work with CSN, Nevada State, and the community college system, as well as higher ed, to help try to create some of those employment opportunities for minorities and for everyone. So that's something that we're additionally working on in Henderson.
Okay, thank you very much. Bill Arndt, if you would, similar question, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, well, Ken, I just want to thank those that asked the question, because I think it's important that the questions are asked and that we in the community listen. I think that's probably step one, the most important thing. We need to be listening. And the reason I say that is different communities, different businesses have different needs. And government, when left to itself, tends to try to create one-size-fits-all solutions. And so we want to listen. We want to hear about the needs in the community as far as what the needs are in the African-American community, other communities of color. We want to hear what the needs are. And once we understand those needs, then we can try to address them. I think access to capital is a big part of the conversation and should be and needs to be. As an example, in Nevada, and you can fact check this on U.S. Treasury's website, we have in Nevada one community development financial institution, CDFI, in the whole state. And so it's not that we have bad lenders in Nevada, it's just we don't have enough. And so that's a real issue as far as access to capital. We're serious about the revolving loan fund and serious about it being a micro lending program. We're having great conversations with all the entities on this call. We want the Urban Chamber to be part of that conversation. One other thing that is happening in the community that maybe your membership does not know is that Startup NV, which is a statewide organization, received a 3-year grant from the EDA already to help with entrepreneurship, particularly with underserved communities, women-owned firms, minority-owned firms. And they have money in the bank now to try to do that. We're working with them. We'd like to figure out strategies. How do we build on that and support them with this micro lending program so that we can connect the dots to help with entrepreneurship? And then certainly keep the conversation going. Access to capital, that's not the only issue out there. But I think that's maybe historically the one that we fared the worst in. And so that, to me, that's kind of probably the best place in the first place to start.
Excellent. And then, Shani, before I come to you, I need to do a time check. Here's what I'll say. To the extent the panelists have the ability to continue, I'm okay with that. But we had said that originally we were going to stop at 1. So let me ask our panelists, which of you have the ability to continue maybe for a few minutes more?
I can continue for a few minutes. I'm good.
Okay, how about you, Derek?
I'm good.
And Ryan?
Let's do lightning round answers. I'm good.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, because yeah, we're getting some great participation here. Okay, Shani, from your perspective, and I know you already talked about the partnership with the Urban Chamber, but are there any other things that are being considered at the county to address the economic justice, which will hopefully help with the social justice issues we're experiencing both locally and nationally?
Absolutely. So you mentioned we already have that partnership program that we're looking to support disadvantaged businesses. But one of the other things that Clark County already has in place is a small business, it's SBOP, a small business operating program. And it's through our purchasing department, actually. And what it does, it's a series of classes that helps small business, disadvantaged business, understand how they can prepare themselves to become a vendor or a vendor for Clark County. And so we have that program already established. We are looking at ways that we can expand that program. As Bill mentioned, we're having the conversation about potentially revolving loan program at Clark County specifically. For short-term and long-term, we are looking at the possibility of establishing a business incubator for Clark County. We are also having some conversations with Startup Envy. And so we're looking at, like I said earlier, the county really had a blank slate to start from. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there to be innovative and creative and see, what are things that are working around the country, and see if there's opportunities to bring those things to Clark County. So if anybody has any new or innovative things, because we're kind of starting from scratch on some of our strategic economic development work, please feel free to share that information with me. I'm willing to look at new and different things that maybe haven't been tried or created in our region.
Yes, and I want to piggyback on that very quickly, because I want our members to know that it does work to provide input and feedback. One of our members brought to my attention a small business grant program that was going on and being used in the city of Philadelphia. Took a look at it, found the URL, reviewed the website, and I shared that with some of our local elected officials as well as their staff. And it was used as a means to benchmark off of some things that were in some cases already in works, but in other cases, it provided some much needed education that was used to come up with some of the small business grant programs that we have now. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of, if you have ideas or if you've seen things that have been done in other cities or states or counties, please bring them to our attention and we will definitely share them. Next question I had, or that I wanted to address is, and this touches just a little bit more lightning round manner, are there programs within your jurisdiction to ensure that small diverse businesses can participate in the recovery efforts? In the past, like in North Las Vegas, we called it a participation rate for the Fifth Street and project and some of the other infrastructure projects. But what I would ask is, are there mechanisms to ensure that there will be participation by small diverse businesses in your economic development efforts in the future? And I'll start with Shani this time and work back in the other direction.
Yes. So in our purchasing department, and one of the mandates at the county is that as you begin the purchasing process, we have a database of disadvantaged businesses, minority-owned businesses, and you are required to submit and search that database to see if there's an opportunity to provide that business opportunity to a smaller disadvantaged business. So through our purchasing department, we do have that set up, and that actually is a county-wide initiative. So any department in the county, myself included, there is a threshold and there's a requirement that we first consider small and disadvantaged businesses as we look at our purchasing needs. Ken, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next, we'll go to Bill. So, see, I messed up too, technically challenged at times. But Bill, if you would, are there provisions in the city of Las Vegas to make sure that small, diverse businesses can participate in your future economic development efforts?
Sure. Thanks, Ken. We do have some provisions. We have an employment plan policy that cuts into whenever we give financial incentives to a business or a real estate project, whether it be the city or a redevelopment agency, that there are certain goals, including some aspirational targets. So we continue to do that. The other thing is, I think, and Ryan touched on this earlier, investing in people is really important. So one of the things we're doing at the city is we're investing heavily in educational outcomes. That's not the sole determinant of success in terms of employment and workforce, but it is a big one. And so we continue to do that through our Youth Development and Social Innovation Department, focusing on early childhood learning, K through 12 education. I think we need to do more on the higher ed side. We are working on supporting a large CSN grant to the Economic Development Administration to focus on workforce training for advanced manufacturing. We're really thankful to Derek and Henderson for bringing in Haas and some other manufacturers. And those are really skilled, high-skilled jobs, high-paying jobs. And so having more manufacturing talent, more engineering talent, more IT talent from all our communities is really important. So we're investing in that. And we're building out a campus adjacent to our historic West Side School in West Las Vegas to focus on that. We're also revisiting our 100 plan, which is for maybe more place-based, but it affects heavily the west side, historic West Side, West Las Vegas, and then into North Las Vegas. Although not our jurisdiction, it impacts it. We're laying out specific strategies and coming back to our city council in the next month to say, okay, now these are the time for actions. These are the time for metrics. This is the time for accountability. So we're doing specific things by specific dates. Again, that's place-based, but that's important too. It's not just investing in people, it's investing in places, because where there's been disadvantaged communities, part of that has been place-based poverty. That's been the reality. And I know that's a focus of Councilman Creer for Ward 5 to try to bring up the employment and the incomes for his ward, particularly the historic West Side. That's something that the city's committed to. We have not achieved good enough results in the past. So we're gonna put our money where our mouth is and come up with a specific plan, and then ask the community and our partners to hold us accountable to accomplish some of those goals.
Excellent. And that's one thing that I'll put out there from the City of Las Vegas standpoint. If you have not reviewed it yet, I would encourage you to look at the 100 plan that Bill Arndt just talked about, because it is making an effort to ensure that the area is improved in terms of economic development, but at the same time, do it in a manner where I like to call it healthy appreciation versus gentrification. And what I mean by that is making sure that the existing residents, as well as the existing small businesses, can participate in the efforts to improve things located on the traditional West Side area.
And Ken, just one final comment. I would love to have not only you, but your membership be part of that conversation. So I'll send you the information about when that presentation is going to City Council so that we can make sure you and your membership are part of the conversation.
Definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much, Bill. And that's an example of the things that can be done to make sure that participation from frontline people happens. Next up, as I'm going to Derek and asking this question, Derek, you've mentioned Haas, advanced manufacturing, and hopefully all my members are seeing a central theme that the opportunities of the future are going to involve advanced manufacturing. At the same time, the recently completed event center for hockey, those are all examples of projects where our small diverse businesses can participate. So are there provisions moving forward to make sure that that kind of participation occurs when there are economic development of the type that you mentioned? Go ahead, Derek.
So I don't know whether in the development agreement with Haas, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I could get back to your membership with that. I don't want to make something up and be wrong on something. I will say that there is a number of other things going on besides Haas. There's that whole area of West Henderson is just, it's blowing up right now, and I thankfully very much involved in bringing out a lot of companies to that area. I know that Amazon announced yesterday they're going to start hiring for their facility. That's at 1,000 jobs that they'll start bringing on, which will be very helpful in helping some of the recovery and getting people back to work as well. You had mentioned the event center. The City Council had approved that earlier this month. It was a partnership between the Golden Knights and the city. The second partnership, we have also Lifeguard Arena, which is going up and will be open in October in downtown Henderson, along with a lot of other mixed use development, which there will be a ton of opportunities for businesses to really be part of something that's great. And I saw that Assemblywoman Dina Neal joined, and she's talking about also talking about housing and some of the strategy there. And we definitely have a comprehensive strategy when it comes to redeveloping the downtown or Water Street area, which has included a lot of focus on the housing. Anybody that's been to Water Street or Basic or just the whole downtown area is seeing that the city has really put a lot of effort into improving that area and doing some of the complete streets and otherwise. And we're working with RTC to really emphasize the Boulder Highway corridor and improving some of the mass transit in that area, which is going to help revitalize that area. And we're calling that our tech corridor as Google has finished their first phase in that area, and we're trying to attract some other data centers in there to improve the fiber and Wi-Fi access in that area, to bring more technology companies into that area. But I think there's been a few times that people have touched on education, and I know that the city is working with CCSD, and there's this term that I think is going to be really popular soon called the education slide as it relates to distance learning and really some of the challenges that disadvantaged communities or the social determinants will bring forth as to how we help with education moving forward. And the city has been very committed to providing dollars to provide tutors for a lot of the schools moving forward. So I think you'll see some of that rolling out in the near future as well in our work with CCSD and also the charter schools in Henderson.
Excellent. And thanks for sharing all that information. A lot of great information to follow up on, provide input on. And again, we're recording this and we'll make this available in our weekly In the Know. If you haven't signed up yet, you can do so at info@urbanchamber.org, or if you go to our website, urbanchamber.org, there's also a way to sign up as well. Before I go to Ryan, or as I'm going to Ryan, I wanted to share with Ms. Anderson that a couple of things. Although we're focused on economic development, believe me, education is important to the Urban Chamber as well as our panelists here. So between efforts like workforce, the Project Blueprint, which talks about workforce development, as well as some of the information technology and advanced manufacturing sectors that we anticipate coming here, believe me, we will also be talking about and concerned with having a qualified workforce, as well as their workforce development opportunities there. So perhaps in a follow-up panel, we will come back to that. What I wanted to do is transition to Ryan and give you an opportunity to talk about same question as you move forward with some of the economic development efforts. And we know that between North Las Vegas proper, there's a lot of land, and then Apex, there's a lot of opportunities there once it gets connected with infrastructure. What do you foresee being done to make sure that small, diverse businesses can participate in these future economic development efforts? Go ahead, Ryan.
So I'll answer the question everyone else did, and I enjoyed listening to all of their information, but I followed directions. It's a lightning round. So yes, we do have programs. And one of the things I would suggest to anybody listening is if there's something that you have seen other places, whether it's other entities in the Valley or other places you've lived that would be a good program, that's how government works best, is when people bring us ideas. Ken, you mentioned about some things that you've brought forward and pushed into the municipalities. So if there's anything that anyone's lacking, because we all have these programs in Southern Nevada, let us know so we can do a better job.
Excellent. That'll definitely work. Okay, let's do this. I think we've managed to cover, yes, I think we've managed to cover most everything. Plus, in addition to that, we have URLs listed, and what I'll ask my staff to do is to send something out to everybody who signed up for today so that you'll get all the links in one email. Plus, again, we can share the links in our In the Know. What I'd like to do now is ask each of our panelists to take 1 minute, and from your perspective, name one thing, name one silver lining that you see in the cloud that we're in right now. Name one silver lining that would inspire our small, diverse businesses to keep going. And I will start with Ryan, please.
Well, one, see, after I was all talking about lightning round, now I can't even think of anything real quick. I'd say most important thing, hang in there. I think lots of people sometimes in business, and I know myself, I've thought about this different times, is you think that it's this collision of right time, right place. And that's not really the case. Most success comes from being in one place for a really long time, and then the right time happens. So stay in that place, stay working hard. In this current environment that we're in, be vigilant and enforce social distancing with your employees and patrons. Do what's necessary so we can get through this pandemic and live to fight another day. If you are not coming out of this pandemic looking at doing business a different way, you've really missed a big opportunity. So you should not look at this as anything other than an opportunity to grow, learn, and to seize the moment and keep moving forward. So you need to, if this doesn't emphasize, you need to be versatile, nimble, adaptable. That's what's going to be the difference between success and failure. So keep at it, keep working hard, keep in that place you're in. The right time's going to happen. You'll ride that wave and things will work out for you. But we appreciate all that you're doing. You are the breadbasket of everything that happens in Southern Nevada. So keep going. I would be remiss if I didn't say again, and I'm glad that Assemblywoman Neal is on. She is an advocate, a champion. She wrote a letter to the governor expressing her concern with Southern Nevada communities, especially those that we're minority-based communities. We're minority majority, not getting their fair share. If we don't get those federal dollars designed to lift our community, we're going to be further behind. It's critical that we use our voices to make a difference there.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And Derek, if you will, closing comments, one silver lining in the cloud that we're in right now.
Yeah, I would say that the silver lining is we're not in the same situation we were in the Great Recession. I think that the silver lining is eventually there will be better treatments and eventually a vaccine, and we'll be able to recover a little bit faster than that recession. The other thing is everybody is working together. The federal government put a lot of resources into stimulus bills to help try to weather the storm, and local governments and the state will be working together to try to ensure that as well. So I think that there's some very positive aspects that will help us recover from that. Just very quickly, I saw that there was another question. So we are working from Assemblywoman Neal on barriers. So we are working with CSN and with Professor Rayford on doing a mentorship program based off of our START tank that is now extending to a 6-month program for entrepreneurs to be able to receive the mentoring that they need to be more successful, rather than just doing a pitch session and then having that mentoring afterwards. So that is something that is a focus for us for entrepreneurs, and we'll be rolling that out hopefully by the end of the year as well.
Thank you very much. Bill, if you would, a silver lining in the cloud.
I'm going to give two and try to honor the speed round. I think one is, I think the real estate sector has held up a lot better than I would have anticipated. I think the fundamentals were strong going in. And so I think that'll help us through this recession that we're likely in, and the duration of it. The second one is, I think that this has really galvanized everyone in the economic development community, certainly within the region, but across the state, to focus inwardly. How do we help the existing business community? How do we help small business? Equity, I know, is a priority of our current governor in conversations with his office and Michael Brown. So I think you're going to see more and more programs and things that we directly do for small business. I agree with the Assemblywoman. Mentoring is a huge thing needed in our community. We don't have enough of it. And the other support. We did, just to let your folks know, we have a Size Up location business intelligence software tool on our website that's free for the small business community. We've not done a great job of pushing it out, but it really helps a business on its own create that next winning business plan to sustain their business. And so those are the two takeaways for me.
And Bill, if you would very quickly type that Size Up link, if you have it available. If not, if you provide it later, we'll make sure that we make that part of the list of links that we publicize. Last but definitely not least, she's going to hit the grand slam here. Shani, if you would, please share with us silver lining in the cloud that we're in, and then I'll give some closing remarks before we wrap up.
Sure.
Ahead,
So I think the silver lining is creativity and innovation. I think that our businesses, you can see it in our casinos. I think our small businesses and our large businesses, under our current situation and some of the restrictions, have become very creative and innovative on how to move forward, on how to continue their business. And I think this kind of like situations in the past, like the Industrial Revolution, I think it provides an opportunity for people to grow in ways that they never thought they could before. I think we're going to see new business platforms and new entrepreneurs come out of this situation based on being forced to rethink how they do business. So I think the silver lining is creativity and innovation.
Co-sign. I would definitely co-sign that. Shani, I agree. As we've made our way through this, I'll give a quick example, and it's also a chance to give a plug to some of our chamber members. I look at our chamber members, Grits Cafe, Let's Fry This, Sugar Daddy's Cafe, and some of the other eating establishments, because I know they weren't the only ones. But what they did is they said, given the current guidelines, we couldn't have people sit in the restaurant. So they developed curbside service, they developed to-go service. They figured out a way to market that and adjust it and go from there. So I really, really appreciate what you're saying there, that as we move forward, innovation and creativity are going to be very important. Just as important, what I wanted to do very briefly is address the question that Assemblywoman Neal asked, and that is, how do we make sure that our small diverse businesses, and as a part of that, our African American business owners, operate in spaces that are interdependent? And what I mean by that is, one of the directions the Urban Chamber has had and given to our members is that when you're thinking about starting a business, or even if you're pivoting or scaling a business, look at where the economy is going. We've talked about the fact that hospitality and tourism has entered a very challenging time, and as such, we will need to pivot to other areas so that we have a broader and more resilient tax base. So to that end, you've heard several of our panelists talk about advanced manufacturing and information technology, parentheses, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. Bottom line, whether we're a direct provider that's an inventor or a supplier, or whether we're a peripheral professional service provider like an accountant or an attorney, we need to make sure that we are operating and participating in these new and emerging spaces versus traditional spaces that at best are crowded, at worst may go away or be greatly reduced. So as we move forward, I'm happy that we have a partnership with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, because that allows us to find out the trend and the direction the economy is going in terms of diversifying and expanding. So in summary, I encourage our businesses to find out the direction that our state is going in as far as the economy is concerned and seek to participate in that. My pledge and commitment as an urban chamber is that we will do things like the panel that we had here today to get you that information so that you can make strategic business operations and business development decisions in order to make sure that your company survives to thrive. With that, let me say thank you very much to all our panelists, Ryan, Derek, Bill, and Shani. I greatly appreciate you doing this on behalf of the chamber. This annual Views from the Valley is always a great way to reset where we're headed as a business community and beyond that as an overall community. So thank you all for doing that. To all my Urban Chamber members as well as guests, thank you for being part of this. Just to repeat again, we will be posting this in our weekly In the Know, plus what we're considering, and I'm gonna put this out there because then my staff will hold me accountable. We'll look at creating a digital library, because one of the benefits of doing or going through this period is we've done a lot of Zoom calls, several of which are recorded with some great information. So we need to create a digital library tab on our website, urbanchamber.org, so you can come back at your leisure and look at recordings like this. So with that, thank you all very much for your participation and attendance today. I hope everyone has a very safe weekend, and remember, wear your mask. We want to stay open. We don't want to retreat back into where we were before. So please respect the businesses that you go to, large or small. Wear your mask, adhere to social distancing, keep everybody safe and healthy. With that, we'll sign off. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Ken.